GM Vault says a dungeon in this case is a generic term. The dungeon could be a mansion, a village, a warehouse, a ship, etc. Exactly. You know, it's a contained space where we go from broad thinking into sort of fight or flight and micromanagement, resource shepherding, that kind of a thing. Lots of idea for D&D games, as you've been playing a lot of Run Escape lately. I'm old and have been playing forever. So old. Says Fluffy Sheep. You gotta say hi to everyone, though, if you want it. You gotta say hi. And now she says bye. And there you go. She got what she came for. Here to help us design villains, my cat. New Monica gives the death monologue from his introductory episode in Supernatural. Raven, you're going to jump off to watch The Meg with a couple friends? Enjoy that action-packed horror shark movie. It was great having you back here, Raven. You're always welcome, so it was good seeing you again. Be well. All right, so let's draw on some inspiration. What are we working with here? Well, we made villains last night, and the one in particular, like, we made our overall, like, our big bad evil guy of the campaign. Not that there can't be other villains or, you know, like, minor antagonists in some way. But last night, for sure, I wanted our BBG of the campaign, which we're going to talk about campaign overview tomorrow. But the second one, I wanted to create, through our random process, a villain that would be at the heart of a dungeon. Whether as the boss of the conflict, you know, the final physical conflict, the one behind everything, and that the dungeon leads to the boss, but maybe not necessarily a combat with the boss. Oh, it's your second time watching, and you were cracking up at parts. Hey, that sounds like a glowing review then. Yep. All right, Raven. Come back when you can. Hey, Josh, the NES nerd. It's going really well. We went over some foundational concepts of dungeons, and now we're going to be creating the structure of one. All the while, there's cats, there's hot dogs. I have a cup of tea with me. And we're ready to go. So the dungeon, in some way, is going to serve a purpose of the boss. Otherwise, why would the boss have anything to do with it? Whether he or she lives in the dungeon, is bound to it somehow magically, uses it as, you know, never really goes to it, like, you know, owning a distant factory. You know, you get the rewards of it, but you never really visit it. Still, that factory, or in this case this dungeon, is useful in some way to the boss. And it's a lot easier to come up with a concept for a boss that exists and then have the world come to meet it in a way that makes sense. Rhodey, I have salsa in the house. I had chips and salsa earlier, so I just nuked up a couple hot dogs for my snack tonight. So the villain we created is a giant bent on plunder. His or her objective is influence to seize a position of power or a title. Part of the methodology here is through torture, especially through thumb screws. The villain has a weakness, as a hidden object holds the villain's soul. Aha! If we're looking for a direct inspiration about why a dungeon could exist, the villain could have hidden his phylactery or horcrux or whatever you want to call it inside this dungeon as a way for him or her to be able to access it easily by knowing where the traps and guardians are, but by making sure that others can't get to it, as others probably do want to put this villain down. He or she was a soldier, in particular a quartermaster, and is missing fingers, probably from combat. Or even the fingers that might have been a part of the ritual of undeath or preservation. And so the soul might exist in fact, instead of just missing fingers, what if this person's missing a hand? And so we almost have a hand of glory, if you're familiar with what those are. And the hand of glory is what is clutching onto this person's soul remotely. That being said, this person draws beautifully. And you know what? That means that in this dungeon, we can include those elements, right? We may have a villain. We may have some sort of an intelligent undead, or just someone who's not necessarily sold their soul, but has displaced their soul. And yet, maybe retains humanity somehow, or as you describe the drawings through the dungeon, something seems to be missing. The artwork on first glance appears beautiful, but something about the people just, they look soulless, right? All their eyes seem kind of glazed, or, you know, everyone's cheeks seem just a little sunken in. Everyone seems a little off. Maybe because he took his own soul out. He can try and recreate art, but art requires a soul in this concept. And so his artwork might be like structurally beautiful, but it's missing. It's missing that je ne sais quoi for our objet d'art. The Hand of Vecna? Rhodey. Yeah, I gotcha. The Thing. Our villain paces, and he carries himself in an arrogant fashion. His useful knowledge is going to be, I mean, depending on how old we want to make him, again, if he's an intelligent undead, or if he's just somehow found a way to preserve himself. You know? He cut his hand off to make this hand of glory. And maybe he just hasn't aged since then. That might lead to the pacing and the drawing. He has to have something to do. Maybe he doesn't have to sleep or eat. And you know what? Those are things that we as human beings might take for granted. If you don't have to sleep, you have 8 more hours in your day to do something. But the world still revolves around resting and slumber and downtime. I mean, you can have minions, but then your minions are frailer than you, right? And this is kind of where we can get into an argument of the slippery slope of becoming a lich. You may be a generous person, you know, lawful good, and you become a lich and say, well, I'm just gonna continue my philanthropy into perpetuity. You may, but time will ever wear on, and you might reach a point where, in your time, certain words, certain actions, certain cultural norms are now no longer allowed. They're taboo, or Or if they haven't worsened, then maybe they've accelerated in some way, and you seem behind the times, if not just outdated, or suddenly, you're this generous philanthropist, and you refer to goblins as an old term back in your day. Suddenly, you're a racist or something along those lines. When you're using the accepted words, even by goblins themselves, from back in your day. And so, word gets around, oh, there, that old soldier in the haunted mansion on the hill, he doesn't like people, he calls them names. You should have heard what he called the goblins that just moved into town. And meanwhile, the guy's like, what? No? Oh, Rhodey. He might rant as he paces, Azrael. He's got to fill in his time somewhere else. So time will move on from him. He could try and actively involve himself in time. Maybe his culture would accept him. He moves into a neighborhood that doesn't judge him for never aging or dying. His ideal is more neutral. He might just have a blunt approach to things. No nonsense. An old soldier who's only getting older. He is protective of a sentimental keepsake. Could be his hand that holds his soul. And, because we rolled twice, and his colleagues. And so, we might have a dungeon that is filled with, this quartermaster and his soldiers. Maybe they all gave a hand for preservation, but they can't leave this area. And so they're all preserved as, immortal soldiers. This group is frozen in time. And at the end, if you truly want an interesting monster, we have a monster that's made of, 100 single hands of everyone, of our boss and 99 of his soldiers. And you have to defeat that monstrosity, which clutches the souls of the people to, for one reason or another. Oh, all right, Josh. I dig that idea. Is this a half orog? And half orcs are their own full race called Hito. And if a Hito is called an orc or a half orc, they consider it a serious slur. Yeah, in fact, Azrael, that creeping claws are a fun monster to put into a dungeon, and this dungeon can be full of them, right? In a flaw or a secret, he interacts with people in an arrogant fashion. And why this is a flaw or a secret, the DMG will prompt you that if the PCs can uncover parts of an NPC and or a villain's their personality, that it can provide some kind of benefit or insight. Maybe it allows for charisma checks to be an advantage because you can exploit a personality flaw, or you have knowledge that this person is seeking something important, and if you bring that important item, you'll earn this person's favor, maybe without having to fight. Azrael, 1,000 evil things. Oh, look at that face. My players are in a valley with a curse where a bunch of undead walk around the forest at night, and one of the random encounters is a creeping claw. Oh. Where do they go during the day then, Josh? So this is the boss of our dungeon. Whether he's in it or detached from it and it's important in some other way, here he is. Or she. We haven't really decided. In fact, if we want those details, we can go through a quick character generation and fill it out. These are steps that we might have taken last night, but again, I had to cut the broadcast short because my energy just went way down. They return to the ground near an old ruined keep. Ah, okay. as well, if we take a look, what's the area that we generated? What exists here? Where might a dungeon like this be located? Right? So we have this city, Apogea. It's nestled in the crook of a mountain here, plenty of fresh water. There's a fort that spans a natural pass between the mountains, or through the mountains between each side. As we were randomly generating it, each side has its own sort of set of ruins. There are some underground tunnels that are manufactured, as well as some natural caves. And in this case, it allows for a lake that's on the west side here to trickle through the mountain and manifest on the east. And from there, we get into a man-made lake and a man-made canal. And we said that there's like a little trading post with dwarves or some other dwellers here. So if we want an underground base, or if this is a new fort, is there an old fort? Are there ruins of a fort somewhere? Maybe the ruins are over here, or the ruins are underneath the statue that is atop this little bit of mountain here. Right? Use what's around you. And it doesn't take, too much, agonizing of, I don't know, like I want to make a dungeon, but it seems so complex. Step by step. World building, character building. Take a random idea and plant that as your seed and let it grow from there. So if we have an old soldier with an old crew, they've made some sort of pact or something in order to be preserved. This villain, or it could even just be, again, a very blunt, neutral party, but they need information. But they can't get that information because they have to prove themselves to him or something along those lines. Well, in the midst of the lore of this region, which we created, the region had half-orcs, or as we had ended up designing them. Josh, kind of like what you're saying here, we reskinned half-orcs because of our 5th character we randomly generated last week into being sort of like a natural, like a manifestation of nature, kind of like a shifter, a lycanthrope of some kind. And you know what? They showed up again as the minority race, and the dominant race were tieflings, which we said, so how can we take this concept? Well, we have a ruined or toppled statue of a person and a ruined or toppled circle of stones. So these shifters representing nature came from the circle of stones, and the tieflings came from this ruined or toppled person who was representing arcane magic. So we had natural magic and arcane magic. There was some sort of a war or a conflict, and from that, divine magic. Magic from outside of oneself that was given, not given by an entity of some kind, not grown within you, grown or groomed in some way. And so this dungeon could be an old fort from that war, and the people there might have been some of the first religious practitioners. And that's what ended up sparking this truce, and that's what is now causing tieflings and half-orcs, as we've structured them off of half-orcs, but we've reskinned them with flavor. And that's what's making humans. Humans are the amalgamation, as these races have been coming together through faith and, in intermarriage and reproduction, or just over time because of the magics inherent in this area. Humans are actually the byproduct of other races, and not this kind of middleman or middlewoman, quite literally, that's more of the, going out instead of coming in. It's more of a medium than a we're creating more of a destination where humans are the destination and not the medium through which other genes travel. Hey, Katie Sue and Doomfish, it's great to see you. You two should have mail this coming week. So look for it, and when you get it, let me know that it came in. If you want to take pictures, that's fine, but at least when you get your shipment, make sure to let me know, okay? And Ryder Roadbook, welcome to the channel, and welcome to the discussion. Katie, we're clear. We're clear. And so, sorry, I was on a soapbox talking about what we've been developing. So, Katie, thank you for the raid. And welcome to you, Writer Roadbook, and Doomfish. It's kind of a coddle. Dark Wolf, I had a... So the story to what we're tentatively calling Biddy the Snake, B-I-T-T-Y, is... I was looking, or I have some mascots for the channel that have been developed. And I wanted a mascot, or at least a representation, something fun for the Bit Cup, because, you all do support the channel through bit donations, through purchasing boxes of minis, which, hashtag sellout. I have these 2 boxes of Monster Menagerie 1 left, if anyone out there wants to give them a good home. Tomorrow I'll be able to pull a couple boxes off my wall to restock, and we can get through the weekend. And then I might have a big restock in time for this coming Wednesday, which is it's our raffle, where I'll be giving out full boxes of minis. Oh, speaking of the woo, so Dark Wolf came up with the idea of a flying snake to use as sort of the mascot for the Bit Cup, and so she designed a flying snake, not unlike the one that her character, her Tuesday character Noralai has. Okay. So we're creating lore. Everything now is naturally, I think we're starting to get a better picture of, what we want. What are we going to do here? And you know what? This could even be hooked in here. If there's a river ferry guided by a skeletal captain, maybe something is... this might be one of the soldiers that has been able to leave. But because he left, his body has decomposed, mostly. And what might be holding him, in sentience, would be maybe the lantern on his ship holds his soul. Or her. And that could end up being a clue that the players can encounter before the dungeon, even. In that there is this skeletal ferry captain that will take people, back and forth or along the canals. And so we're talking about, soul containment and the like. If they, you could drop hints through this skeletal captain about, he was the 100th member, right? So you have like the captain or the general or the colonel or some other high-ranking officer, and there were 99 soldiers. 98 of them stayed behind, and the one left while this ritual was going on. He escaped. Maybe he didn't agree with what was happening. And the ritual occurred, and everyone else's souls were taken. And in this case, they all made hands of glory except for him, except for the skeletal captain, who had this. Maybe he stole the prototype. The original idea was to put the souls in some sort of a container, like a lantern. Almost have everyone walk around like Tonberries from Final Fantasy. So he stole it, meaning that the leader couldn't stop the ritual and had to do something. And so he had everyone, as they were pledging themselves, the soul went into the hand, and they had to now sever their hands because this initial magical lantern or something was taken. And so now everyone who lives in this fortress, in order to continue unliving, had to have had their hand removed to make a hand of glory that was clutching their soul in the fingers. I think we're building lore. And we're starting to come up with a very interesting, if not creepy, dungeon. Evil dungeon? Creepy? Okay. So we have our primer. We know the villain. In fact, I even think we know whom they can encounter. And we can even place the dungeon. We can place the dungeon in an important location that's relevant here. In fact, we can even have it be, if we want, this underground fort could be here in the mountain. And it wasn't until only recently, until after this war, you know, as a way to bridge peace or the like, you know, symbolically and quite literally, that they built this fort that spanned the pass that went, that's going between the mountains. So we have an underground location, used to be an old fort military base. It is populated by undead soldiers. Night of Woos, all right. Diadems, Monster Menagerie 1 are the 2 boxes that I have left here. And I might be getting more Monster Menagerie 2 in. We're going to see what's going to happen for Wednesday, which is when we have our raffle. Tomorrow, I'm going to be pulling some boxes off the shelf, and depending on what people bought over the weekend here. So, you know, Wednesday is when the Thursday is my D&D group, and then of course we have Friday and Saturday. So Saturday evening, tomorrow evening, I'll be bringing boxes home. Last I knew, I still had a couple Storm King's Thunder and Tyranny of Dragons, Dragon Heist, and maybe some Ravnica boxes as well. But I won't be able to tell you until tomorrow what I'm bringing home. Also, Writer Roadbook, thank you for the follow. I appreciate that. Now we can go through. Oh, all right. Coffee Cat's going to take off as well. So good night, Dark Wolf. Good night, Coffee Cat. A woo to each of you. What are some ways now that we can fill in the dungeon? How can we conceptualize it with words? I know we could draw alongside this if we really want to as well. But if we want to use inspiration from the 5-room model, as well as the 7 things that belong in a dungeon, generally. All these have these asterisks, right? It's your dungeon, you do whatever you want. Here's a guideline. Well, we can find a couple prompts scattered throughout the DMG. It's not as organized, you know, with everything together, but you find a lot here about how to structure an adventure, a campaign. In particular, what is the goal of the dungeon? You know, we have now this backstory, we have the locale, and we even have some monsters and even a good idea for traps that could populate this place. What is our dungeon goal? Why would our players want to go into this place? Let's roll a d20 and find out. Our dungeon goal is 15. Clear a ruin so it can be rebuilt and reoccupied. Okay. Ta-da.
No rush, Matty.
Oh, thank you. No rush? All right. Well, Diadems, thank you for adopting those last 2 boxes in the bin down here. And we'll crack them open here after not too long. We'll go through the dungeon creation process, and then we'll pop these bad boys open. So you can go through here, and I mean, if you want to create an adventure prompt for the dungeon, it's all right here. I mean, we're in the early 70s for pages. If you want to have a sub goal inside the dungeon, you could even let's put this sub goal. Let's roll a d12. 10. Find the source of strange occurrences in a haunted house or other location. So we're sent to clear a ruin. The ruin turns out to be haunted, and we should find the source of the haunting as a sub goal. I mean, you could just, murder everything on the way through and you don't really care. But finding the source might uncover some interesting knowledge, or contacts, or influence, or treasures. Have I mentioned how interesting random number generation can be? Yes, I'm saying that here on Twitch. Random number generation can be very interesting. And if you want to challenge yourself, look at the other options that exist. Could those be viable sub-goals to the type of dungeon that we're creating? So there's some other prompts here. If you want to pepper them into this dungeon, you are very welcome to do so. Do you want to have... so what would be the climax of our dungeon adventure? If you're not sure, if it says that there's a big climax, what would that be? You could randomly generate it. It could be, you could just say it's the fight with the old general. Okay? Yeah, let's roll a d12 and find out what this says. We rolled a 10. A threat more powerful than the adventurers appears, destroys the main villain, and then turns its attention on the characters. You know where this fits? Oh, gosh. A threat more powerful than the adventurers appears, destroys the main villain, and then turns its attention on the characters. You know what this could mean? They make their way through. They actually are fighting. If you remember in our prep, some monsters are just so big and tough that you don't want to fight them. This general might end up being a monster like that. And here comes the cult. Remember, that's the calamity we created for the area. Here comes the cult, who's very interested in this soul-trapping technology. Magic. And or wants the old weapons and armor, the treasures. Wants to find out, is investigating the secrets of this soul preserving stuff. And so as you're having this very tough fight, and you got to be careful. Some PCs don't like a save like this, where the boss is beating them down, and then you introduce someone else who defeats the boss, and in that way maybe some players, little characters, little bit of both, might feel that the glory has been taken from combat, even if it would have ended in their death, because of this Deus Ex Machina mechanic. Can you win with it? Can it create awesome storytelling? Yes. Can people take it as a contrivance? Yes. We randomly rolled it, and I think we can use this in a very good way to introduce the cult if they're going through this dungeon earlier in the level. And finally, they get to meet the leader of the cult, who puts down this threat. Turns the attention of the PCs, but maybe something happens. Maybe that's when the Skelebro, the boat, the captain skeleton ends up coming in. Maybe something happens in the dungeon where a waterway is unblocked. And so the skeleton can help them escape, maybe provide a little bit of backstory. Hey, reward and revelation. I think we're just filling this in. you know, as the cult starts to take over, then of course they can leave, inform the authorities, and of course probably some of the authorities in town have already been corrupted by the cult, maybe. Hey Zenith, hey look, they may be undead, but they are not unpeople. Undead, rise up. That's what most of them have to do anyway. So it's natural. So the reward of revelation, the skeletal captain whisks them away, and as the sole survivor, as the lone survivor, whatever, as the sole survivor of the group, can open up about the past and discuss how it all came to be while rescuing them from the cult that overthrew the undead garrison. Reltech, welcome. You just played your first D&D game last night. Awesome. Hey, do you want to tell us about what happened at your tabletop? I love hearing about these experiences. You know, feel free to share. You know, were you nervous? Was it fun? Was it unexpected? Or do you have questions? Victor, how do I make a character sheet, as in create my own? Look at the elements that exist on the standard sheet. I mean, if you type in exclamation point char sheet, CHARSHEET, or exclamation point charvar for like character variant, CHARVAR, take a look at those character sheets, you know, and consider what's important for players to have immediate access to in order to pilot their characters efficiently. Zenith Dante, welcome. Hello everyone, really like gray-bearded old schoolers talking about the glory days, so I appreciate the stream. Well, thank you for being here. Look, you're sitting at a table in a game store, we're swapping our own advice, our own experiences, while also generating combat, and we're challenging ourselves to think. You know, in each of our workshops, we build, and we make new campaigns, new inspiration, and it goes up into our Discord. You know, you don't have to be a subscriber to access it, because I want as many of you to find inspiration as possible, to find confidence, to become better storytellers. Even if you do have a long beard, a gray beard, even a neck beard, you're all welcome here. Or if you're new and you have naught but scruff, you know, your beard isn't at wizard proportions just yet, you have a place here as well. And so stories and questions and everything in between is welcome here. You know, as long as we're keeping it PG-13. Fluffy Sheep says, if the players feel like their accomplishment has been undermined, they'll be grouchy. It will work if the players don't have strong attachment to the villain that was destroyed. If it was just a monster that was menacing the TUE-3, they probably won't care if the new guy's more interesting. Whereas if they had personal attachment to the villain, they'll feel robbed. That is a good insight. And in this case, you know, if they didn't know this general existed, you know, just that he existed, and it was seemingly was obvious that as you're going up through the ranks of these 98 soldiers, that you'd get to the leader. You know, the leader would be presented as an immediate threat, and so when the cultists come in and they're the true BBEG of your campaign, then there you go. Rhodia makes a One Piece reference, talking about our first games. Fourth ed, Fluffy Sheep says mine was just D&D. No bloody A, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Back in my day. Rhodey's a beard cutter. Gotcha. Yes. As Diadem said, we are much like ogres, who are much like onions, that are much like parfaits. We have many layers. There are many of us here with all levels of experience in many different systems, D&D and its editions and beyond. I've run and played Dark Heresy. I've run and played Eclipse Phase. I've played a couple different versions of Vampire, and I've also played Rifts. I've also played Paranoia. So a lot of us have many different experiences that we can weave together. Which is, hey, this is why it makes for a great workshop stream, huh? Those whippersnappers, back in my day, we had to kill our own dinosaurs to make our bones. Well, their bones were our dice. We called it casting lots. And back then, I'll tell you, we only had 6 sides to our dice. Oh, none of this fancy 8+ sided dice shenanigans. Oh, for the old days once more. Hey, Neo Realms. Neo Realm says mammoths make good dice. Yeah, you can get mammoth ivory dice, actually. Entertaining trivia, the oldest dice we have artifacts of are 4-sided. They were mini pyramids. Oh, yes. The pyramids. The earliest dice were gifted to us by aliens as blueprints for the actual pyramids found not just in Egypt, but around the world. Excuse me while I put my foil hat on. I believe that there are many rogue brainwaves floating around. I'm not saying it's aliens. But it's aliens. We are but human. We ancient humans just didn't have that 4-sided technology or the 3-sided technology that our alien overlords required. Oh my, this rabbit hole is going deeper, huh, Josh? D4 for wizard health rolls. D4 is a pyramid. Coincidence? I think not. All right, so I think we're having some really good concepts. We know where the dungeon's going to be located. We can imagine it is populated by, well, 99. Of course, our clues are going to say there's 100. Now, does that mean they have to kill all 100 skeletons or zombies, or maybe they just look normal except everyone's missing a hand because of the ritual? If you have a party that wants to keep a kill count, that can qualify as something, well, both something to be killed or something to kill you. This can be a different path. In order to enter the final chamber where the boss, this boss general is, you might need to have collected the hands of 90, well, it'd be, so the minus the boss would be 99, minus the fairy captain would be 98. So you might need to collect 98 hands or souls, or just kill 98 soldiers, and the final door will open. Or you might be able to collect several objects. Maybe, so among the 98 other soldiers, there's going to be, like lieutenants, like, kind of middle management staff. And so you might need to collect their unique weapons. And so you have, you could break out the 98 into different divisions. And each of them has a leader. And so the door to the final room requires either that you've cleared out all of the zombies or skeletons or however you want to make these soldiers, or you have stolen, bargained with. I mean, they would have a semblance of intelligence, or just killed and stolen I don't know, a helmet, a spear, a shield, and some greaves, right? So apparently there's 4 divisions or something. And if you like complete a mannequin, like a stone soldier that is awaiting, its gear, then that will open the door to where this general rests, or is restless, is producing a lot of these drawings apparently. And so we now can feature different paths that can be combat oriented, that we could make puzzle oriented, whether it's to figure out the importance of some of these things. Like, I don't know, maybe you describe all of the soldiers as, dirty, dusty, things are scuffed, except when they encounter a leader skeleton or whatever, it's the first one they encounter, its helmet is immaculate, no dust, no scuffs, and so that could be a clue. But is it a coincidence? Well, then they continue meandering around and they find the leader of the second group, and everything including the helmet is dirty except for its shield. Oh. And they might have already passed, if it's in a central location, this stone statue that had an empty arm, so it's like this, and of course, there's a helmet, and maybe you could even say that looks like there were scuff marks on the stone. Depending on how much you want to reveal, you're the DM. You have to determine what's the cognitive capability of your players. I don't say that as an insult, because you could have very smart players who just are not good at riddles or puzzles. It happens. They might know everything about a car engine, and even fixes your car and gives you advice, and and keeps up on prices, and can even do like quick financial stuff in their head. But when it comes to a puzzle like this, Reltech, hey, thank you for the follow. Browse around, come back as you want to. This is casual, this is conversational. This is a game store. Walk in, browse. If you want to sit at our tables and chat, you're welcome to. And if you're done, we'll be around. Say hi to us. You can also find us on Discord if you want as well. Oh, Diadem's already provided the link. All right, so different paths. We'll say the room to the... we'll use this as jargon. I mean, whether it's a boss monster and we want to run it like that, it could be a social encounter if you want your last encounter to be that. Room to the boss is sealed and requires either deaths of all the underlings, which was 98. The raiments of the commanders. I did not spell that. Or did I? Raiments, right? Like, dress and such. Did I spell it correctly? Rainments. The raiments of the commanders, and we'll say that there are, let's see. So it'd be like weapon, shield, helmet, shield, weapon. Maybe it is. Oh, no N. It's raiments. R-A-I. All right. Derp. R-A-I-M-E-N-T. Ah, okay. Then we could put, I know we have helmets separately. I don't know. You could call it a crown if you don't want it to be a helmet. Then we could say armor, and lastly, a very stylish military commander's cape. Or lastly, we can say that this commander has a secret entrance that he takes in order to leave this chamber. You know, so he keeps it sealed for everyone else, but maybe he has a secret way. And so you can even put in a third. I wouldn't go too many more. Find.
Matty, I would like to adopt some orphans under the drums.
Oh.
Priest, the Dregende, and nicht. Die Vorkreide for $18 total. From Radika Aspect.
Yeah, so Azrael, I'll go through and total things up. You know, because you've been purchasing a lot of spare minis also. I think you know, the total, if that adds up to 30, that's fine, because I won't charge you for additional figures, because you've purchased a lot of individual figures from our orphanage. And in fact, I can even throw in a couple bonus figures for you as a thank you. But I'm going to be secret about those, and you're going to have to wait until you get your package to find out what I'm throwing in as a thank you. But yes, Azrael, thank you very much for that, and I will pull those minis for you and update your pull list on our Discord, and let you know, if the total needs adjusting or the like. Find the secret and most likely heavily trapped entrance. Okay. As we're going through our checklist here, what are some other concepts for this dungeon that we can throw out? An entrance with a guardian. That could very well be. You could reverse that and have the puzzle or the role playing challenge be the gatekeeper, and then there's some sort of a fight on the inside, and maybe that's how we can mix it up here. In this case, we're going to switch with room 1 and have the entrance be sealed with a riddle or puzzle. After gaining entry, the group will be encountered by soldiers in short order, which can prompt a social interaction, probably a difficult social interaction, or a fight, though the fight doesn't have to be lethal on either side. Right? They may be undead, or at least held in some kind of stasis, because they were able to sort of remove their souls from themselves. So they might not be living, they might not be dead, but they also might not be undead. They're just soulless, or just preserved because their soul doesn't deteriorate. And so they haven't really been a menace, right? They haven't been crawling out of their graves and eating townsfolk. They might even be, they're these living. It's a living museum of history for the people of this area that we created. And so it could be social. If the party has what it takes to, speak their language, incentivize things. Again, you're offering a couple different ways, and it could lead to a fight. But if the fight is maybe fought with honor, whatever you make that note as a DM, and if you think the fight was honorable, the people said, fine, are we to fight? Then fight like soldiers, no magic allowed. And so that might indicate also that the enemies here don't have magic, or if they do, they don't use it. And so they'll fight, and let's say that through weapons, so it'd be like through bad rolls or whatever, the skeletons or the soldiers here beat the party. But if the party fought with honor, they might either take them further in or even just escort them to the captain right from the entrance, right? Depending on how that goes. But if magic is used, whether it's curative magic or something along those lines, I mean, so maybe they need a sneaky sorcerer to cast very subtly, or in some way, show, like, have very to use mage. I've played in mage games too. To use coincidental magic and nothing that is overt. Because if they see magic being used and they're fighting with dishonor, they'll shout it out, and these people must be killed and taken care of. Because they are not worthy of the secrets of this place. And then as for the challenge of the riddle to get inside, it could be something based on history. In fact, it could be something that, because the prompt was that could lead the party here, right? The overall dungeon goal, clear a ruin so it could be rebuilt and reoccupied. So maybe some dwarves or someone found an old passage that led to this sealed door that had a riddle, but the dwarves didn't know what was going on. And they wanted to hire someone to go in and just take a look, people who might know what this is all about. And so this is going to lead the party there. The party can interact with the door, and the door might have a riddle that would require them to go into town. Look, these soldiers aren't going anywhere. They're waiting for whomstidative ever, to come by. So it could be its own little mini challenge to be able to piece the clues together. Now, do I have a riddle offhand just to throw, in an impromptu workshop? Not necessarily. I'm sure we could come up with that, or a puzzle. It could be a physical puzzle. You need to. It might even mirror the puzzle that's on the inside of the dungeon in order to get to the final area. Where you have to, speak the old words for armor and helmet or whatever, to prove you're from that era. Hey, that could even be, you could tie it in. If you know later on that skeletal captain is going to be showing up, then maybe the riddle was set up because the soldiers were holding out. They wanted to hold out hope that their 100th member, this captain, would come back at some point in time. And so maybe the captain's lantern is required to hang on the doorway as proof, like, I've come back, brothers. Now, does that mean that the party has to kill the captain or convince him, hey, can you hang your lantern up here for a moment, or can you at least come into proximity of the door? See, this is how brainstorming works. We start out with different ideas. We're letting them grow. They're coming together in a lot of different ways, and this is all in accordance to everything we've already generated for the area, with our map, our region and city that we've developed, for our PCs, and for the villains, and even the NPCs that we've created so far. Ezra, the Riddle of Steel, even Conan hasn't figured that out, brother. Josh says, what if a guardian's a statue, and if the puzzle solves, the statue goes out of its way? So, that's a good tried and true method as well. You could use a shield guardian, a stone golem. You could just reskin, I don't know, whatever else you want to look like stone. Something to be killed. In here, they might not, if they don't want to combat the soldiers, your players may still want to kill something, whatever it is. You can throw in some aspects in here, like maybe some will-o-wisps have taken up residence because of the emotional mojo going on, right? or with the weird soul magic that's occurring. Plus, the will-o-wisps might even look like the souls that these hands are clutching, and be tricks, like little false leads or the like. So, like, for sure, they're not gonna have to feel bad about putting down these will-o-wisps. And you might even sprinkle in a couple other monsters. Maybe, I don't know, something that lives down here, maybe that the soldiers don't interact with. That they don't care. They don't have to eat, and nothing in it, and they're not going to eat them. So you might have some rust monsters. Like if you want a neutral monster, there's soldiers down here. They might not like rust monsters. So you could put in something malevolent, like will-o-wisps that were attracted here because of the odd necromantic soul preservation thing. You could have some of the soldiers be corrupted even. Not everyone has to be good. And so, either they produce the will-o-wisps, or you could have things like flaming skulls. Cariatid columns. But so aren't those those are like dryads, like nature spirits? Or so, something like some of there could be something living in the stones, like gargoyles, like guardian gargoyles who are just set to, attack anyone living who goes into a restricted area. Something to kill you? Well, obviously, I mean, you have the above of what's to be killed. But if they anger the soldiers, commanders, boss. And we can even put in something that is like a roaming monster, like a very powerful roaming monster. In any room or section they go into, they might have a chance that this monster appears. Sort of like a Mr. X from Resident Evil 2 and 3. Maybe can never be killed, but at least can be disabled for a while. So it would offer several brief combats, but it would keep the players on their toes as they try and lose this thing throughout the twists and turns, while also either moving stealthily if they want to avoid aggroing these soldiers or whatever else. And so we could put in a good what would be a good wandering monster in this with this thought? Like, what would be a good kind of monolithic monster that could end up, doing that slow chasing stalk, random encounter throughout this place? Yeah, the default alignments are suggestions, Josh. You make a very good point. It could be a golem, Rhodium. Although I think putting something... Yeah, a shield guardian and other like similar constructs may not necessarily be bad. Those are good. Those are good. Like those are solid choices. Almost like a default choice, and I don't say that as an insult. But what might be? I don't know. What would be a step sideways? What could we put in there that would be really unexpected? Something that would be. Maybe a less encountered monster type. Like what about a Chul or an Umber Hulk? But then again, we have to ask, why is the Chul or Umber Hulk, or I don't know, whatever else we want to put in there, why is it not attacking the soldiers? Is there a relationship somehow? Because there could be a clue to your players to see, well, this thing is aggroing us. It's chasing us. We can't seem to put it down, but it completely ignores these soulless soldiers. Bone Dragon, Knowles. We haven't really made an encounter table per se, so that could be up to us. The Umber Hulks are the cavalry mounts of the soldiers. That is scary. Oh, and by the way, something to be killed are also the crawling hands. Because remember, all of the soldiers, including the commander, with the exception of that skeletal riverboat captain, had to create hands of glory. So they all were like saying their anthem, and then they had to remove their hand, which is holding onto their souls. And so, like, crawling claws would be another something to be killed, or, you know, it could kill you. They might encounter these little creepy crawlies all the way through. Oh, like some sort of like a pudding or an ooze? If that's the case, If that's the case, I know it'd be breaking from the core 3, right, from the monster manual. There's a type of ooze called an oblex that can mimic humanoid life. You know, it can take on forms and be a bit of a shapeshifter. So maybe if there's an oblex that takes residence in here, because the creatures, the soldiers don't have souls, the oblex doesn't detect them. It doesn't detect them as something that is real. You know, it's something that's not necessarily consumable. In fact, maybe even the oblex wanders the hallways looking for the last several claws to collect. Because it doesn't destroy the claws, but maybe it wants to hold all the claws. It's because the oblex can turn into any of the soldiers for whom it has their hand. In fact, maybe even an alive version, if they're encountering undead kind of withered forms otherwise. And so that could be, instead of collecting, you know, all of the claws, maybe there's only 10 claws that are crawling around left that have so far managed to avoid the oblex. And so the claws are also in a similar race as the PCs are. And so and you're also making a distinction. When you see a soldier or soldiers that look withered, they're the soulless, like the natural or whatever, the soulless variety. When you see a soldier that appears hale and hearty, that's actually an oblex clone. And that's something to discover through the course of the dungeon. In fact, that could even be the trick or setback. Maybe the oblex has cloned a lot of soldiers, or at least initially. Who knows? You know, there might not be a lot of soldier bodies left because they have been destroyed. Because all the oblex wants are the hands of glory that are clutching onto the souls. Trick or setback. Oblex is hunting the souls of the soldiers as well, and have almost collected them all, and presents a constant stalking force, as it also wants the souls of the party. GM Vault said, I had a player paladin once at level 3 that failed his knowledge check and just used his greatsword against a black pudding. Almost a TPK until the earth elemental showed up and scared off the black pudding. If the soldiers had to cut off their hand, perhaps the cavalry use a sharp lance a la Captain Hook over their stump. Oh, yeah, it's got a custom weapon. Josh has another aquatic, but thought for the future, or for you DMs here in chat. Sahagin are rarely encountered. They might be a fun way to mix things up a bit if you don't have aquatic enemies. Bullywugs can qualify. Kuotoa, if you want another sort of fishy race, could be interesting as well. Mr. Plunderloot, hello, welcome to you. Someone to talk to? Well, that could very well be the soldiers, depending, or even the oblex itself, if they can somehow negotiate or encounter it or put it in a position of being weak in some form or fashion. Something to experiment with. Aha. What if the players can encounter the ritual chamber room where they too can remove their souls. Or otherwise find, I don't know, other spells to be amplified due to the ancient magics. So it's some sort of an amplification chamber. If they want to remove their soul in some way, maybe they talk to the skeletal captain like, yeah, so you need a receptacle for it. And if you don't have one, then you have to hold your own soul. They've obviously seen elements of that all around before they would get to this chamber with the other soldiers. And they may have pieced together something, maybe, with the skeletal, like the ferry captain. And so if you have a player that wants to create their own phylactery and kind of put themselves in this soulless state, then maybe they find a way to do so. You know, you as a DM might allow it. Or they just find out that any magic cast in here is somehow twice as powerful. Or it has a wild magic effect. Or, I don't know, something else happens because this is, it's on a ley line. Or there's something that, you know, could interact. Because if magic is an extension of one's soul, and this place amplifies soul magic in some way. You know, so they might be able to use this as a trap for the obelisk that's been stalking them, or at least the one like the tendril that's taken a shape. Or they might be able to be chased by the soldiers back in here, only to have their charm spells be twice as potent, in order to convince them we're not your enemy. We just want to talk. Tell us what's going on. So they can use it for peace or for combat or for healing. Murloc, yeah, Murloc's fluffy sheep. GM Vault, yeah, maybe a dais that will change. So yeah, what if you know, it could act like a what you're talking about is the reincarnation spell. If one of them dies, maybe they can be reincarnated here. As a DM, that might give you an excuse to run a more difficult than normal dungeon. I mean, should you want to kill your players? I'd argue no. But it could be a good relief valve if that occurs, that a slain player can be taken here to be reunited with his or her soul. And maybe something wacky happens also. Pneumatica says, get a psychiectomy, amputate the useless extension, and get a free appendectomy and get your wisdom teeth out. Ears punctured for free, inquire at Not Devils Inc. Something to steal. Well, there are all kinds of historical artifacts, weapons, books, etc. that are in here, right? This place has been sealed up for hundreds of years. Lost knowledge, you know, pieces of gold, jewelry, things along those lines. There's a lot of stuff in here that can be stolen if they want to steal it. Off of corpses, off of, you know, they find it, you know, stashed away. You could even find mundane stuff. You know, soldiers might keep a daily journal. And so if they find a barracks in here, I mean, not that the soulless soldiers walking around need it, but they might be able to find valuable just day-to-day information from that point in history, which is a major point in history for the people who live in Apogea. But here's the ground, you know, from the trenches, almost literally, just a common diary of a soldier. That could be worth a lot to certain people back up in the city. Fluffy. Yeah. And so here we have it, everyone. I mean, besides, what is something the players probably won't find? Friends along the way? No. You actually might be able to do that in this dungeon. So you could include here a relic of some kind, an ancient sword, you know, some sort of magical Aegis shield. It could be lost knowledge. It could even be something that would be kind of like akin to, an original copy of the Constitution or the Declaration of Independence, if we want to go with the movie route with Nicolas Cage. The signing of when both sides of the mountain first came together. Maybe the soldier contingent was there, and they were tasked to guard it. And they were until, I don't know, way back in the day, some rogue agents wanted to disrupt the newly born peace. And so they stole away with this original coming together, like this magical contract, or a mundane contract, but this like original constitution that is holding everyone together. And so it's a national treasure, right? And if the players find this, which is very well hidden, and recover it, this can do so much to unify the people of Apogea, and especially on a morale level, combat this cult that's starting to move in and is trying to wear away those ties that bind everyone together through their faith. So, can the campaign go on without this, this constitution? Yes, of course it can. Can you put it completely out of the way, and if your players do somehow manage to find their way, a little bit of A or B to it, can it have a significant impact even without being a sentient sword, Ravensteel Blackstorm Bloodclaw, the +5 sword of blood death? Yeah, you don't have to always have, legendary artifacts like that. So original copy of the allegiance between both sides of the mountain. It can rally the people together, resolve their faith, and even improve the political climate as modern copies seem to have some language drift from the original. That could be something fun to find along the way. Not just on Discord. DM Vault. I think you can set it. I think you could set them for free. You could offer PDFs for free there. In D&D Beyond, I think you can upload content, Victor. Unless there's a bard in the party, says GM Vault. A singing fish, says Josh. Those journals are hard to read, though. They cut off their normal writing hand. Well, so presumably that's when the journal entries stopped. Or that's when the handwriting wasn't so good anymore. Wouldn't you need a history check or to talk to an NPC to determine what the contract is? I mean, not everyone's going to know what it is. Possibly. I mean, you could just describe whatever this is as it's an old rolled up piece of vellum. Looks to be rather well preserved. And it's in a language that you're not familiar with. Maybe it takes a little magic or some skill checks to get through it. But they might not know. And if you describe that initial blush of, so you find an old rolled up piece of vellum, looks like an important document, very good handwriting, but the language is a little hard to read. I don't know, you might have a party that just says, I don't care, it's not a magic scroll. Pooh. Who cares? And throws it out, even after finding it. So you do have to be open to that, where some people just might not be interested. They might just pass it along. It's called DM's Vault. It's an extension of Drive-Thru RPG. And there's also D&D Beyond that I think you can share information. GM Vault, I'm working on a book for my players for Monday night. The book was creation guide written by a demigod all about the planes. The reader can get sucked into the book in a very surreal experience. You get that hands-on knowledge because it puts you in it. It's like Myst. And so here we go, ladies and gentlemen. It may not have necessarily been in order, but we have made the concept of our 5-room dungeon. we have made sure to sprinkle the seven things you should consider having in a dungeon here. It fits in with our villain. It fits in with the history of our region. And overall, and of course, it meets the dungeon goal we randomly generated, as well as the sub goal. Find the source of the strange occurrences in a haunted house or other location. You know, so this is just clear a ruin. But when they find out that something strange is going on in the neighborhood, that could be a sub goal to earn an extra reward of some kind. Hey, 12. Well, welcome back. If you can't shut down yet, then hang out with us. Talk, enjoy, share stories. You got to work in the morning. GM Vault, it's always a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for your wit and wisdom. And GM Vault, thank you for sharing pictures of your work in progress for your Underdark 3D terrain map. Yeah, it could even be after the after the clearing, you get political clout or a monetary reward. Can you list the 7 things you should just consider having? Not the things to put under them, just the 7 things themselves. Yes, I will repost. I will repost the links here. There's the 7 things, Josh. And if you want to know the general concept behind a 5-room dungeon. Now, a 5-room dungeon can have 10 rooms, but the 5 rooms are sort of a distilled, here are the big landmarks in your dungeon. Josh, you're very welcome. I mean, look, we're here to share ideas. We're here to share experiences, and we're here to brainstorm with each other. I'm very happy if I can help get you some resources, then there they are. So now, if we wanted to, we could do a kind of a quick and dirty sketch, right? We're not out any ink, just some electrons, some colored pixels at worst. And if we wanted to, we could sketch this out. We could say that, so that there's the cave system that this is going through, and it's kind of rocky and craggy. In fact, we might even have an area kind of opens up, and there's an underground river which they'll have to cross, but of course that'll play into things later. That's how they'll end up meeting the Skelebro captain. So that kind of does its own thing. So there's the door here that they have to unseal, and then from here, and again, look, just sketch it out. Don't worry about getting the details of every chamber. So is this a barracks, and should there be a footlocker for every bed, and are there sheets, and those are details that will come. But make the set piece first. So there's our entrance. We know that this river is going to come into play. There's the door. Beyond the door, it's going to lead to it'll lead to now maybe quasi maze like, so it'll probably have chambers kind of coming off to the sides, come down. So this kind of comes up. This kind of comes up. All these little branches could be, So what would a fort look like that was staffed by 100 soldiers? It's underground, so it'd be sort of like an underground base. But there might be like sealed entrances and exits that can be found along the way as well. Down here, it could turn into, kind of a maze, or just all sorts of things can go on. Big, like, open training ground area. And it all can lead around to... They're going to have to find this other door that they're going to have to open up by collecting the souls or the 5 pieces from the commanders or something along those lines. And then that is going to lead to, maybe there's some traps or something along the way. That is going to then wrap around until we get to the boss. Like, if you want to say an arena, look, it may be called video game verbiage. Don't be afraid of it. It's fine. We understand it. If we're talking in broad concepts, I get it. It's in an arena. And you know what? If it's positioned here, you know what that means? That somewhere here is a secret tunnel. And this is how the commander can leave. Like, this is the route that only he knows. The commanders don't. So it'd be up to the players to find it as a third route. To either the 2 ways to go through the main door, or 1 way to go through the back door. Or if you don't want it to be here, then put the secret door all the way here, and the entrance to it is actually here, and now there's its own little, you know, like mini maze, little mini dungeon, you know, something kind of going on that then comes out to here. This new section looks like something I could create in Wolfenstein 3D. I actually have a Wolf 3D map editor. Oh, that's cool. Hey, and yeah, use it. Look, Wolfenstein, you know, for a first-person shooter like that, it has a lot of dungeon levels to it. Enjoy it. Have fun. Right. So we have this, and in fact, we can even say that if the players didn't discover this, maybe the cultists did. And that's how they come in and dispose of the general, you know, in the midst of combat, so that they can come in one way or the other. So maybe the cultists come in and finish off the soldiers and make their way in here, or they're going to come in through the secret way. Either way, you're still going to have this interaction. We're going to be able to introduce the cult in the story, and show off their skills in either battle or secrets, one or the other. And then that can force... that can then force a chase. In fact, if you even want to keep this secret door here, maybe this one doesn't open at all unless this door opens. And this one always opens as a safety measure, right? So that the general could never be pinched inside his own private, you know, apartment or training area or whatever. And so the cultists found the obvious secret door here, because it is supposed to be an obvious secret door. This one, though, is the super, like, no one's going to find it, because it is for emergency use only, not common use. So there wouldn't be any of the indicative scratches for, you know, a swinging door on tile or whatever. And so what this could do is allow an out that if they didn't want to fight the cultist, or the cultists were really winning, the party could then escape up through here, make their way through the dungeon, and of course, like, later on we could sit down and fill in the details, and, you know, what's the barracks, what's the training room, you know, where was the bathroom when they were still living, kind of a thing. But this could allow them to escape out this way in a race, because look, the cultists can make their way back through here, come back around, and possibly cut them off. So we can have a chase, and I think that could be a lot of fun too. But that would allow them to get out this way, and this is where then the skeletal captain can meet them and, woo, ferry them off and have them escape the cultists, to warn people or to do whatever. Ta-da! We have a dungeon, everyone! It has its own ecosystem. It has its own reason to exist. Everything that exists in it makes sense. It makes sense in the world. It makes sense in the lore and the history. It'll be easy to balance out. Look, if you want to put traps in a dungeon, look up traps in the DMG. All you need is a little block about this big to guide you to, you know, is it a magic spell? Is it a spear? Is it a dart? Abide by some very simple math, and then apply whatever you want to it. It's not that difficult to do. So, I mean, we could sit down for another 8 hours and then really fill in the minutia of this place, which could be fun in itself. I'm not going to do it tonight. You know, it could be fun in itself. You have the broad map. You have the broad concept. And so now you make it come alive with the evidence, the clues. You know, what's on the tapestries? What's featured? What are the sketches that the boss makes, the art that the boss draws and hangs up around the place? Again, like the clue of, you know, everyone seems just sort of like hollow, because he himself doesn't have a soul anymore. It's been removed. And so he can draw beautifully, but if you don't have a soul and you're drawing, always seems to lack something, right? Veil Fears. Man, my party just had an epic session. We killed 3 dragons and liberated a provincial capital. Heck yeah, that would feel good. Are you willing to are you willing to go into more detail? I'd love to hear about this adventure. Yeah, please do, Josh, when you make that map. So anyway, hey, we stuck to the basics. We stuck to simple ideas. And look at all that we've accomplished together in our workshop. I think we have an awesome dungeon here. You know, you could clear it in a session or 2. I mean, you could always go longer, but you could make this a rather short dungeon. You know, it just depends on how much work the Obelix has already done to collect the souls. You know, so maybe the group just needs to explore and find 3 hands that are still scampering around somewhere. All right, everyone, let's take like a 5-minute break, use the restroom, let your dog out, whatever you need to do. Let's come back in 5 minutes, and Diadems, I'm going to pop open those packs because you sponsored these last 2 Monster Menageries. And, hey, we can still have table talk. We can share stories. Vale, I look forward to reading your story. You know, for any of the rest of you who've, you know, done planning or mapping or the like, let's talk about it. Share stories. If you want to go through and just casually add more details to this place. Oh, this would be a cool idea if. Let's do it. Right? The evening's still kind of young. It's only 2:40 a.m. right now. But yeah, 5 minutes. All right. And then we'll be back.